When you think of American politics over the past 40 years, there have been few surnames as dominant as Clinton. Led by the husband and wife duo that was once self-destructed as two presidents in one, the pair went from dominating regional politics to taking on the biggest office in American politics. First, you had Bill, the charismatic leader who swept into the Oval Office in a landslide. Then there's his wife, a lawyer turned former presidential candidate in her own right, who has never quite reached that top spot, but has enjoyed a fruitful career all the same.
I'd love to meet the person who makes your pantsuits.
Oh, really?
Have you thought about what you're going to be wearing at the debates?
I have no idea.
Do you wonder what your opponent might be wearing? I mean,
I assume he'll wear, that red power tie.
Or maybe like a white power tie.
That's even more appropriate.
Given how long they've been able to stay in the public eye, you'd maybe assume that they were beloved by the masses. But the truth seems to be that they're actually so entrenched in the system that some people fear that their power goes deeper than what we're permitted to see on the surface.
I didn't say anything for anything
No,
personal.
you didn't, but you had a great tone in your voice, and you're very good at it.
That's just...
Thank you. I'll take that as a compliment.
It is a compliment.
Thank you. And I did not go to Yale Law School or any law school for that matter.
After years of rumors and whispers behind the scenes, recent hearings regarding their conduct have made the world reassess what we know about the Clintons behind the scenes. And let's just say that it's a really bad look.
Mr. President, we have about 5 minutes remaining in the majority's first hour, so I just want to ask you some questions related to the crimes committed by Mr. Epstein and Ms. Maxwell.
It's your boy Luesta, live from Lu Extras, and these are the Clinton Files. If you didn't know, William Jefferson Clinton decided to become a politician after meeting JFK during a trip as a delegate for the American Legion Boys Nation. After abandoning his dream of being a professional musician for a career in public office, his life took another big turn when he met his Yale classmate Hillary Rodham, and as they progressed into public life, they immediately tried to build a picture of an idyllic relationship.
As much as I care about my work, my relationship with my wife, Hillary, means even more to me.
Sometimes people ask me what it's like being married to Bill. He works so hard and keeps such long hours and becomes involved in so many other people's lives and problems. I always tell them it's great. We really cherish the time we do have together and appreciate the fact each of us works hard.
But no matter how seamlessly they appeared to fit together, Bill always had appetites that he isn't exactly good at disguising, with a fellow Yale alumni recalling that he always moved like that.
Did I know he had been unfaithful in his marriage? Yes. He's a great flirt. I'll leave it at that.
And even as he's gotten older, this has never really subsided.
The curtains. As they watch this moment. It's always been easy.
Oh no, he didn't.
First lady,
in this regard, their relationship has been forced to weather many storms, one of which came in 1992, just as he first attempted to get into the White House. This began with Gennifer Flowers, a woman who worked for the state of Arkansas and had been a cabaret dancer. Once he started his campaign, Flowers claimed that they had been in a relationship for 12 years while he was governor of Arkansas. Things got even worse when a former state employee sued him, claiming he had used government resources to fund his affairs. Almost as soon as the allegations came out, the Clintons banded together, with Hillary telling reporters that it's not true and that we just have to trust the American voter to make up his or her mind. This prompted Bill and Hillary to appear on 60 Minutes right after the Super Bowl to deny everything, making sure that they had the biggest audience possible when they did it.
Who is Gennifer Flowers? How would you describe your relationship?
Very limited, but until this, friendly, but limited.
She's alleging a 12-year affair with you.
That allegation is false.
I'm not sitting here as some little woman standing by my man like Tammy Wynette. I'm sitting here because I love him, and I respect him, and I honor what he's been through and what we've been through together. And if that's not enough for people, then heck, don't vote for him.
However, Gennifer wasn't willing to concede or back down, claiming that he was clearly being deceptive.
The truth is, I loved him. Now he tells me to deny it.
The problems of Bill and other women are central
to the Arkansas years and the marriage of Bill and Hillary Clinton?
Well, I'm sick of all of the deceit, and I'm sick of all of the lies.
The rumors about other women that are more than rumors, they're based on fact.
He is absolutely lying.
Despite the minor carnage that it caused, the Democratic candidacy was still secured on the way to the presidency, which he won with almost 400 electoral votes. Only years on, Clinton admitted in a deposition that there had been a sexual relationship between the two, but Jennifer is still on his neck years later, suggesting that he'd harassed her and others.
You know, I'm advocating that Bill be prosecuted for his sex crimes, just like Harvey Weinstein has been arrested and Bill Cosby is about to be sentenced. Why not Bill Clinton? He's nervous. That's why he's acting that way. And, you know, probably has some health problems, and it's affected his ability to respond as well as he used to be and tell lies as good as he used to.
Well, you were a young woman, 27 years old, when you first, got involved with him, and you started having this relationship. At some point, you've now decided that it became a non-consensual harassment relationship, which doesn't really comport with how you originally classified this. So now, how are you all these years later claiming that it was non-consensual at some point?
It's very interesting because back in 1977 when I met Bill, we didn't have the laws to protect us. We as women, I was in the workplace in a man's world. I just had to do the best that I could. When I first met Bill Clinton, it was when I was sent out on my first story by myself after my training with my cameraman. He came on to me that night. I told him to knock it off. He proceeded to continue to come on to me for 3 months before I decided that I wanted to have a relationship with him, which at that point was consensual. But in today's standards, and in hindsight, it was definitely sexual harassment. I was a little bit ashamed to admit that because in a way, I felt guilty.
However, this was no isolated incident. Former Arkansas State employee Paula Jones sued him for harassment in 1994, leading to Bill dishing out an $850,000 settlement, but never admitting to any wrongdoing. Around the same time, another woman by the name of Juanita Broderick emerged with even darker allegations about how the future president had forced himself on her in the 70s.
Did you think his interest in you at the time was personal or professional?
I thought it was professional completely.
So you thought this was going to be a business meeting?
Yes, I did. Yes, I really did.
Did you have any qualms at all about him coming to the room?
I was a little bit uneasy, but I felt a real friendship toward this man, and I didn't really feel any danger in him coming to my room. And then all of a sudden, he turned me around and started kissing me, and that was a real shock.
What did you do?
I first pushed him away. I just told him no, please don't do that. And I forget, it's been 21 years, Lisa, and I forget exactly what he was saying. It seems like he was making statements that would relate to, well, did you not know why I was coming up here? And I told him at the time, I said, I'm married and I have other things going on in my life, and this is something that I'm not interested in.
Had you that morning or any other time given him any reason to believe you might be receptive?
No, none whatsoever.
Then what happens?
Then he tries to kiss me again, and the second time he tries to kiss me, he starts biting on my lip.
The statute of limitations meant that Juanita couldn't press charges, and she stayed quiet for years because she didn't think anyone would believe her. By the middle of his presidency, the list kept growing. Clinton was reportedly linked to former Miss America Elizabeth Ward Grayson, Maria Furtwängler, Canadian politician Belinda Stronach, and Patricia Duff, among others. Most of it got brushed under the rug, but there was one he couldn't shake: Monica Lewinsky. You know the name. Here's the short version. An anonymous tip led investigators to look into Clinton's relationship with the White House intern. On January 7th, 1998, Monica signed an affidavit, basically saying that nothing had happened. What she didn't know was that her colleague, Linda Tripp, had been secretly recording their conversations, which proved she lied. Clinton denied everything, including during the Paula Jones lawsuit hearings. Then January 21st hit, and the story of a certain blue dress went global. He kept denying it, with Hillary calling it a right-wing conspiracy.
I did not have sexual relations with that woman, Miss Lewinsky. On January 27th, Hillary Clinton echoed the denial, arguing in an interview on the Today Show that the charges came from a
vast right-wing conspiracy that has been conspiring against my husband since the day he announced for president.
However, not everyone was willing to play ball, and after Lewinsky's mother handed over the blue dress, Lewinsky would later sign an immunity deal to testify. Eventually, Clinton consented to give a blood sample to prove if what was on the dress was his, and soon, he admitted to inappropriate intimate contact.
In a deposition in January, I was asked questions about my relationship with Monica Lewinsky. While my answers were legally accurate, I did not volunteer information. Indeed, I did have a relationship with Ms. Lewinsky that was not appropriate. In fact, it was wrong.
This gave way to an October 8th impeachment inquiry before he was eventually acquitted on both charges during the trial at the Senate. While Clinton apologized and moved on, without so much as dropping his approval ratings in the way you'd expect, Monica was dragged through the mud and basically became a meme before they existed. In the years that have passed, Clinton has proven that he clearly regrets it.
We all bring our baggage to life, and sometimes we do things we shouldn't do, and I told her exactly what happened, when it happened. I said I feel terrible about it.
I was so, personally hurt, and I can't believe this. I can't believe you lied.
She said, well, you have to go tell your daughter. She said, that's worse than me. And so I did that.
Through the lens of Me Too now, do you think differently or feel more responsibility?
No, I felt terrible then.
But once again, it hasn't prohibited him from holding positions of power or being highly regarded as a statesman. For many politicians, allegations like that would be liable to a death sentence. But the man that journalists have been calling Sick Willie since the 80s has been accused of a lot worse without so much as damaging his credentials. Over the years, Bill Clinton has been linked to all kinds of shady situations, but one of the more eyebrow-raising ones involves a man named Barry Seal, a former commercial pilot who turned drug trafficker and was reportedly being paid $1 million per fight to smuggle for Pablo Escobar's Medellin cartel. Now, the reason Clinton's name gets pulled into this is because the whole operation was running out of Mena Airport in Arkansas, which happened to be right in his backyard as governor, and was widely regarded as a hub for all kinds of illegal activity at the time. Barry wasn't just moving drugs either. He was also reportedly tied to the Iran-Contra affair, which involved the US government secretly trying to arm rebel forces, looking to overthrow the Sandinistas in Nicaragua, with Mena allegedly being used to train those operatives and even fly weapons over to Iran. When the scandal started gaining traction, Clinton's response was basically that it wasn't his jurisdiction and that he had no knowledge of any of it, which plenty of people weren't exactly convinced by.
But tell me, did they tell you that this had to be in existence because of national security?
Let me answer the question. No, they didn't tell me anything about it. They didn't say anything to me about it. The airport in question and all the events in question were the subject of state and federal inquiries. It was primarily a matter for federal jurisdiction. The state really had next to nothing to do with it. The local prosecutor did conduct an investigation based on what was within the jurisdiction of state law. The rest of it was under the jurisdiction of the United States attorneys who were appointed successively by previous administrations. We had nothing, zero to do with it, and everybody who's ever looked into it knows that.
However, another smuggler by the name of Roger Reeves suggested that Clinton knew vastly more than he was letting on.
So he went to work. He must have flown 30 loads for me before I got arrested.
Okay. And the reason why Arkansas was a safe place for him was because he was friends with Bill Clinton, who at the time was the governor of Arkansas.
And when he wasn't the governor, he was still the strong man there.
Right. So according to your book, Barry Seal paid millions in bribes to the Clintons to allow him to actually land the cocaine in Mena, Arkansas.
Each load, I paid $50,000, supposedly, to somebody at the top. And he said, I'm going to have supper with the governor tonight. That's all he would say. Never.
Okay, so it's not like he said that he was bribing Bill Clinton.
He didn't say it.
He kind of inferred it in a way?
Yeah, completely, yes.
Okay.
I cannot get caught. Then we look back on what happened, we see that he couldn't get caught.
Yeah, okay. And at one point, Barry was being paid $1 million per flight?
Yes, exactly. He got $2,000 a kilo, so 500 kilos is $1 million, yes.
Eventually, Seal began working for the US Drug Enforcement Administration to avoid jail time, but was shot dead in 1986 at a safe house in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, by an apparent Medellin cartel hitman. But there's plenty of people who've suggested that some other forces may have been at play. Now, before we get into this, it's worth saying up front that what we're covering is largely theoretical, but there are a lot of people who genuinely believe that the pattern of people in the Clinton circle dying under suspicious circumstances is no coincidence. The idea even has a name: the Clinton body count, which is a theory that the Clintons had people silenced before they could implicate them in any wrongdoing. And it's been floating around for decades with a surprisingly long list of names attached to it. One of the most cited cases is Arkansas lawyer Vince Foster, a key figure in the early Clinton administration, who was found on July 20th, 1993 with a gunshot wound to his head, ruled a suicide despite reported inconsistencies in the autopsy, and Clinton aides being seen searching his office shortly after he died. Foster was also tied to the Whitewater scandal, a real estate deal the Clintons were involved in that cost taxpayers around $60 million, with Kenneth Starr leading a multi-year investigation where Foster could have been a key witness. Then there's James McDougal, another Whitewater figure who agreed to testify for the prosecution and was serving a prison sentence when he suddenly died in Fort Worth, Texas, with speculation that he may have been denied proper medical attention. Ron Brown, Clinton's Secretary of Commerce, was under corruption investigation when he died in a plane crash in Croatia, and the story got darker when a military pathologist reported a circular wound on his skull that looked like it could have been a bullet hole. Journalist Danny Casolaro was reportedly deep into investigating a wide-reaching scandal he called the Octopus, which allegedly implicated the Clintons, and was found dead with his wrist slashed just before publishing, with his notes gone, and people close to him insisting that he had shown no signs of being suicidal. White House intern Mary Mahoney was shot and killed at a Starbucks in what was ruled a robbery, except no cash was taken, leading theorists to believe that she had been about to come forward with damaging information. Jerry Parks, former head of Clinton's security detail, was shot multiple times shortly after Vince Foster's death, with reports that his father had been building a private dossier on Clinton, and that Jerry himself had told people he feared for his life. And DNC staffer Seth Rich was shot dead in what was called a botched robbery, despite his wallet, watch, and phone all being left on him, with unconfirmed reports suggesting that he was behind the DNC WikiLeaks leak. The Clintons turn my stomach. They're so revolting. This administration has the most blood on its hands. In previous eras, the concept of a Clinton-orchestrated death squad would seem completely unfeasible and would be written off as just some absurd idea by a conspiracy theorist, some of whom have always come after Hillary in particular.
But let me get serious here for a minute, folks. It's not giant wasps that live under the UN building. It's roaches. And the thing about it is that Hillary Clinton, and this is serious high-level intel, Hillary Clinton is actually the mother of all roaches, and she secretes giant bubbling cysts that themselves are then mother roaches that go out under government facilities and then give birth to all other species of bed bugs, roaches, and government bureaucrats. They were all born out of Hillary's lower intestine and colon.
But in recent times, we've learned that far-fetched ideas such as an island where the elites act out their sickest fantasies on kids was actually a reality. And coincidentally, there is no bigger name on the list of those attached to the Clintons that met a premature death than Jeffrey Epstein. And at the moment, this is bringing the alleged wrongdoing of the couple back into the light once more. After years of largely evading the scandal, Bill has been put under the microscope for his ties to Epstein, with Pam Bondi suggesting that he must be held to account during her brief period of eagerness to prosecute people in the files.
Well, we know he was on the plane, not only on the plane a couple times, multiple times. He traveled internationally with Jeffrey Epstein, and he was on the plane called the Lolita Express because it supposedly had a bed in there where Jeffrey Epstein had young girls. He has been a friend of his, a continuing friend of his for years and years. Contrast that with Donald Trump, who hasn't spoken to him in many years, over a decade, after he kicked him out of Mar-a-Lago for bad behavior. So that's the difference there. And I think Americans see the two-tier justice system. But, you know, we don't know. They're saying Clinton has not been to his private island, but he has traveled all over the world with Jeffrey Epstein. I want to know why A.G. Garland and the Justice Department are so quiet on this tonight. You know, they're out there labeling parents domestic terrorists, yet they're saying nothing about this. And these documents were so slow to come out.
Years on from those comments, both Bill and his wife Hillary have been subjected to hearings led by the House Oversight Committees, and to say that they haven't done them any favors is an understatement. For starters, watching him examine certain documents had people freaking out, particularly because it seemed more like he was reminiscing than being repulsed. Immediately, people were horrified by what they saw, insisting that people said it was basically a silent confession. Dude's got zero self-control, just sad. And in an attempt to process just how horrifying this was, people have begun naturally making jokes about it.
I like that one. Nope, I do not recall. Nope, never seen these before in my life. Nope. Never. Ooh, I miss her. I miss her. Can I get a copy of this? For, well, you know. No? Alright.
Although it was one of the worst offenses, this wasn't Clinton's only mishap, as he was deemed to be pretty slippery throughout.
Like them young. Why would Epstein say that about you?
Are you asking his opinion? You're asking him to think about why Mr. Epstein would say something about him?
Why would Epstein say that about
So she's asking
President?
you to try to be in Mr. Epstein's mind and guess at what Mr. Epstein would have thought about.
Clinton likes them young, referring to girls.
First of all, that's not true.
What's not true?
That I have any interest in underage.
I didn't say underage, I said young.
But it's still not true.
Is an intern young?
Yes.
As it progressed, he was asked about specific situations relating to Epstein, including fielding questions about a notorious painting that the disgraced financier had in his house.
To the record, we have a painting that seems to be of you, Mr. President, found in one of Jeffrey Epstein's residences, wearing a, I would categorize it as a famous blue dress worn by the White House intern Monica Lewinsky. So, Mr. President, we are looking at an image of a portrait that is looks to be you, Mr. President, in this blue dress. Can you describe this painting? And
He doesn't need to describe the painting, you just gave him a picture. What's your question?
my question is, are you familiar with this painting? Have you ever seen it in person?
I've never seen it in person.
Then, there was a series of photos that were captured during his many reported journeys with Epstein on his plane, the Lolita Express. And at a certain point, it just got more incriminating with each image.
Have you ever had contact with an individual by the name of Shantae Davies?
I believe Shantae that's a distinctive name, and so I think that was the name of one of his flight attendants.
Okay. She's been described on being on a 2002 Africa trip and providing massages. Was she or any other young female on that trip underage at that time?
Not that I'm aware of.
Did you ever receive a massage or have physical contact from her or anyone else on that trip?
You've seen the pictures. There was one time when I was sitting up and I got a back rub, a neck rub.
Okay.
And I think Shantae did it, but I'm not sure.
Okay. Did you ever visit Epstein's Little St. James Island?
No.
We have Virginia Guffrey, who has testified seeing you on the island with two young girls. Did this occur at all? Why do you think she would have made that claim?
Objection, speculation. He can't possibly.
Have you ever met her or any other Epstein associated underage girl?
Not to my knowledge.
Naturally, Clinton and his legal team implied that a back rub was as far as it went. But there's no telling what wasn't captured. Because after the footage of him being massaged by a young lady, there were photos shared which saw him in a hot tub with a series of girls.
And what we're trying to get at is some context for the public on whether you remember this photo and any details you may be able to provide us about it. So do you recall the details of this photo, or recall the photo being taken?
No, I don't think I ever knew the photo was taken.
Okay, and for those who can't see it, it's a photo of you in a hot tub. There's a person next to you here. Do you remember where it was taken? Where was it taken?
I'm almost sure that this pic, and I think there's an adjacent photograph, which you probably have, that if people saw it, they would feel that someone was trying to con them showing this picture. But anyway, this picture was taken in Brunei, and we flew one night on a trip to Asia, the last very long leg.
You said we, who is that including?
Well, my TIL team that was working
Thank you.
on the AIDS issue, and Mr. Epstein was there.
During the hearing, Clinton also said he wasn't ever present on the notorious Little St. James, aka Epstein Island.
Mr. President, were you ever aware or engaged in any of these sexual orgies.
Are these on the island where he's testified that he's
No,
not
ma'am,
been on the
I
island?
was never on the island.
Were you ever on any island in the Virgin Islands?
To travel for a trip with his wife, which is on the public record? I'm
With
sorry,
Jeffrey
what's your
Epstein?
question?
No.
You were never in the Virgin Islands
Islands with Jeffrey Epstein, no.
Okay, thank you.
Do you think a young girl massaging a president is unusual?
So are you asking his opinion?
But due to his past deviations from the truth, it didn't exactly stop people having their suspicions about his statement. The sequel to I did not have sexual relations with that woman. While most of the questions pertain to sexual misconduct, it wasn't all that they touched on. And for those who believe in the Clinton body count theory, the fact that he showed zero emotion about the string of deaths connected to him didn't help either. And when Epstein's heavily disputed suicide came up, he claimed that he knew nothing about it.
Mr. President, was your friend Jeffrey Epstein suicidal?
Are you classifying him as a friend who he has testified that he was friendly?
He has called him a friend in a letter.
He said he was friendly, but not. You've asked for his testimony.
Mr. President, do you believe that Jeffrey Epstein was suicidal? Was he ever
She's asking for the
suicidal?
best of your understanding.
I don't know. I only know what the medical finding was. I think maybe he finally got caught. And I don't know. I've accepted it in my own mind. I don't know what happened.
Mr. President, what did you accept? That he killed himself or that he did not?
That he did, but I don't know.
Then, when asked about a staffer who was killed in suspicious circumstances, he completely parried any notion of foul play.
Are you aware that Mr. Middleton committed suicide
Yes, I
in
am.
2022? He was found dead at Hefner Ranch, approximately 30 miles from his home in Little Rock. He was discovered hanging from a tree by an extension cord around his neck with a self-inflicted gunshot wound to the chest. So he was shot and hung. Do you have any information that leads you to suspect that he did something other than commit suicide?
No.
Do you have any concerns that this was in relation to his knowledge or relationship with Jeffrey Epstein, given the date?
The president has
of the
already
suicide?
testified to the fact that he was unaware that Mr. Epstein was visiting the White House. So are you asking him then as to what he would have known?
I'm asking, when you heard about the death, knowing about the things that have been, at this point, it's all over the news, seeing that he has committed suicide. Have you ever had any conversations with people about whether or not that there's any relationship between the two?
Oh, no. No one's ever suggested it to me.
Okay. Thank you. I yield back. Next up, Mr.
It's really sad.
After all was said and done, the verdict was largely that Clinton had come as only focused on his own self-preservation, even if he actually got praised by Republican congresswomen for playing it straight.
I'm going to go back in, and what I will say is that I don't have any reason to believe right now that he's hiding the ball and everything. He's been pretty transparent.
However, Hillary, on the other hand, didn't get off nearly as easy when it was her turn.
But I think we have a very important interest and curiosity about what specifically the co-conspirators had a role in all this, right? We know for a fact that some of these were women. And I think that today, at least with my line of questioning, I'm curious about that. Why is it that these women were giving plea deals as adults for trafficking minors? How much of that did they witness, et cetera? And so, I don't know that Secretary Clinton was all that honest about the context of this investigation. We asked extensively about intelligence ties, whether or not she felt that she was targeted as a result of possibly an intelligence gathering operation. And she was very curiously interested in that. And then also, you'll hear it in the response, but had told us to follow up with a few countries, one of which is our ally. So that's interesting.
In Bill's case, he seemed pretty composed when he wasn't being actively alarmed on the stand. But when it was Hillary's turn, she responded almost vengefully to every question about anything from the Pizzagate scandal to Epstein himself.
Are you aware of any files that were on Anthony Weiner's laptop in a folder that was titled insurance, life insurance, with a zip file titled Frazzle?
This is way outside the chairman's ruling.
This
is
is
this
way
within the
outside the
scope? Is this within the scope, Mr.
If
Chairman?
the chairman rules that it's not within the scope, I
Mr.
have
Chairman,
other
based
questions.
on what you said in the public hearing, is this within the scope?
At every turn, the territory that they moved in seemed to infuriate Clinton, eventually leading to her basically crashing out on the stand.
Very much about at all.
And
what
then
she
how do
was
you know
doing.
Howard Lutnick?
I know Howard Lutnick because when I was senator on 9/11, the firm he headed, Cantor Fitzgerald, suffered the greatest loss of life. As I recall, something like 650 of his employees were murdered by terrorists that day. Howard Lutnick missed being a victim because he was delayed dropping his child off to kindergarten. You asked the question. I'm going to answer your question.
Now you're going to yell
This
at
was
me?
what I spent
You're
my
going to yell at me.
time doing.
I'm a survivor trying to look out for other survivors trying to
and
get to the
I
bottom
was
of it.
taking care
You
of
waited
the
6
people
months
who
to
lost
get here today.
3,000
6 months,
lives
and now you're being
at World
defiant
Trade
and
Center.
indignant today.
You asked me
I have
about
met
Howard
with Epstein
Lutnick.
survivors. I'm a survivor myself. You have emails. You've denied that Jeffrey Epstein, that you tried to get Jeffrey Epstein to give money to you.
I did
but
not.
Howard Lutnick was
If
used
you
to
have an
get
email
money.
with me asking Jeffrey
I
Epstein
have
for
an
money.
email from Howard Lutnick sending it to
what's
Jeffrey
the question?
Epstein and his
What's the-
people to
I
raise
don't-
money for
I don't
you
know about-
for an event, an intimate event for you at his offices
Well,
at Cantor Fitzgerald. You're
look,
going to sit
if
here
you-
today
if you would let me finish.
obfuscate and say to this committee, you didn't try to get money from Jeffrey
I
Epstein
didn't.
when
I
there was
didn't.
an intimate event in an email that Howard Lutnick emailed to Epstein's people and Epstein to get him to come to your intimate event at Cantor Fitzgerald, a very small event. And so I'm not going to put up. You want to yell at me, that's fine, but I'll yell right back.
But things were kind of complicated when it came to her handling of the Epstein matters, because while she was showing a desire to save face for her husband's sake, she was also happy to wield the Epstein issue as a political tool and sought to implicate the current president.
And finally, do you think that Donald Trump should be deposed by this committee?
Absolutely. You know, I was a lawyer, and as a lawyer, you would look for pattern and practice. If you were deposing a witness in a case that you were trying, if you were in court, what did you know about this person? What you knew could influence how you questioned that person, how you tried the case. Donald Trump has been held civilly liable for sexual assault by a jury of his peers. 9 members of a jury found him liable in the sexual assault of E. Jean Carroll. That is behavior. That fits a pattern if one were looking for a pattern.
After all that combativeness, Hillary was eventually given a pass to get out of there. This took place when photos emerged that gave her grounds to leave, leading her to get very aggravated once more.
Excuse me, can I interrupt?
I have
There are photos that are being released of the secretary as she is testifying from inside this room. Can you please advise me as to whether or not that's permissible and consistent with the rules, particularly given that we have asked for a public hearing? If there are photos that are being released of the secretary as she is testifying, can you please explain how that
I'm
can
done
occur?
with this. If you guys are doing that, I am done. You can hold me in contempt from now until the cows come home. This is just typical behavior.
We will go off the record.
Oh, for heaven's
So I would like
sake.
to understand how that's permissible.
Before the hearing was,
It doesn't
Excuse
matter.
me.
We all are abiding by the same rules.
I will take that down.
Yeah,
So I would like to take a break at this moment.
Yeah,
and I'd like to have
I'm
a
done.
conversation.
Although they voluntarily showed up, it's hard to imagine that they'll feel they accomplished any of their goals with these hearings. Especially because while Hillary used it as a stage to throw Trump under the bus, her husband didn't exactly comply.
I hate this, but because I don't believe I should inject anything. But I do not want to leave the impression, but since there was no follow-up question, he never, the president never, this is 20-something years ago, never said anything to me to make me think he was involved in anything improper with regard to Epstein either. He just didn't. That's the truth. As I said earlier, the only conversation I had with President Trump about this was in the early 2000s. And I have no information that he did anything wrong.
And when they considered why he didn't, a lot of them felt like there must have been an ulterior reason as to why he wasn't eager to throw accusations. So you're saying they're covering each other's backs. Got it.
One of these things is not like the others. Hillary gave the answer. Okay, that is the actual answer. What Bill Clinton did was cowardly. All right, that's up to you to decide. Sure, Bill, you're right. It is up to them to decide. But can you at least explain why you think they should? Yes, President Trump should have to testify in front of the House committee for all the reasons Hillary just laid out, not to mention for the amount of times his name has been mentioned in the files and because it was revealed that the DOJ withheld Epstein files mentioning Trump. They're just trying to get information, okay? That's it. They're just trying to get more information. So for Bill to say it's up to them to decide is cowardly, okay? They called your wife into a deposition and questioned her, and she said she didn't know Epstein, couldn't even recall meeting him. Meanwhile, someone who was his actual friend mentioned in the the files as much as President Trump, has, in front of Republicans? Yes, who support him? You couldn't say yes.
But where some feel that this was a missed opportunity, others who are in support of the Clintons believe they set a tone that could be a problem for the current president. The Clintons outsmarted Trump and the GOP. They created legal precedent, so now Trump and Melania must also be subpoenaed because the former US president and the First Lady were subpoenaed and testified. The Trumps can't claim the fifth or it will make them look guilty.
But we do know there's stuff missing, and the Department of Justice seems to be deliberately hiding it and playing, with the help of the Republican Congress, misdirection. One of the dumps of the Epstein files a few weeks ago was simply about Bill Clinton. It was so transparently political. And Allie, that's where we are again today. An attempt to shift this focus on the Clintons, even though we know President Trump has privately expressed some concern about this, because by putting the spotlight on the Clintons and making them sit for these depositions, like, well, okay, why not President Trump? He even had more of a relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. I know you're...
Whether or not this was a chess move, it's fair to say that every time they pop out these days, things look increasingly damning. Even if the current climate would suggest that they'll face no real repercussions. Due to their long-standing status in the government and all the accusations that have swirled around them, there is an inherent mistrust of anything they do, especially as conspiracy theorists will always dig into it all and connect dots between their recent comments and everything else they've ever said or done. With both of them now deep into their 70s, the wise thing to do would be for them to step away from public life, because if not, they might wind up looking even shadier than they perhaps do now. My name is Luesta, and I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.